Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another live broadcast of Believe, where we look to inspire, influence, and impact the listening audience, our viewing audience, and those who check out the playback. My name is Cortland Jones, author, educator, and entrepreneur, and I'm super excited, not just because it's Super Bowl weekend, but I have a great guest who is with me. I actually have two guests who are with me today. Lanita Hostin, part of Young Professionals Development Scholarship Fund. She's going to talk about what she's been doing here in the DMV as it relates to advocating for youth. And LaJean Pratt, she is a holistic wellness advocate. Two phenomenal women, which is the topic of today's show. And so just hold on. These are two young ladies who are getting into some good trouble. So hold on. And on the other side of the break, you're going to get a chance to hear from Lanita. So we look forward to having the show today.
It is key that you mind your mental health.
Hey guys, how's everyone doing this week? Hi.
Use the 5 keys to mental movement.
It's been a really monumental week for me. I realized that I was not being myself.
Reaching out.
Be positive attitude person self, like you guys know me to be.
Staying upbeat.
And get back to that happy, cheery self you guys of me.
This week's been kind of
Being
stressful
creative.
because of all of the workload that we have on online learning. So I've been trying to use different platforms and different websites to help ease my mind and ease my stress.
And what about you, Margaret?
Well, you guys know me. I just love to work with others and serve them.
Serving others.
Realize that when I serve others, my mind is off of myself.
That's right. And don't forget, self-care is key.
Self-care.
All right. So see you guys next week.
Right.
Bye.
Your mind matters.
All right, welcome back, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me. As I stated, we got some phenomenal women on today's show. This is the first of two shows where I'm actually celebrating the official launch of my show, Believe. And seeing that it is Black History Month, I decided to title today's topic Phenomenal Women, because we do have two phenomenal women who are with us today. One of them is Lanita Hostin, and I'm going to give her the opportunity to introduce herself and talk about some of the things that she's doing. And as I stated before, this is somebody who's getting into some good trouble. So welcome, Lanita, to Believe. This isn't the first time you've actually been on our show.
No, I'm a two-timer, and that's good to be invited back to someone's house.
And we are happy to have you with us.
Yeah, super glad to be here.
So talk to us. Tell us a little bit about who you are for those who are meeting you for the first time, what you do, and then let us know about this scholarship fund that you are actually involved with.
Absolutely, absolutely. I label myself a student success strategist. I simply help students stand on their own 2 feet after graduation with the goal of getting them competent, competitive, and confident to pursue their dream career after high school. Ultimately, we want to see our young men and young women be self-sufficient. And the way that we armor them to do that is by increasing their self-esteem, their identity, their self-concept, and then empowering them to be active in their communities.
Nice.
And then build those workplace skills. So I do that by way of keynotes, workshops, private programming, that sort of thing. I run my own 16-week program called the Excellence Academy.
Nice.
And this year we released a new project called The Pursuit of Black Excellence for teens. And it's our latest new, I would say, culturally relevant curriculum for self-exploration and career development and community service. And so we're pretty proud about that. And then on the other arm of that, I'm a philanthropist. It's tough for me to accept that word. I'm not a person of labels, but essentially that's what it is.
Yeah.
Just a person giving something.
Yes.
And in this case, it's funding to attend schools. And so I co-founded the DMV Young Professionals Scholarship Fund. And I'm pretty proud about that. Me and my co-founder, Felicia Fort.
Nice. Well, again, thank you for joining us. And we want to thank Felicia also for
Yes.
Collaborating with you.
Yep.
My first question, when I hear everything that you're talking about, specifically as it relates to the scholarship fund, where did the inspiration come from for you to move forward with it? And what do students gain from being a part of that?
Yeah. You know, I would have never imagined having this level of responsibility, because to raise money is is his own job. But I remember in January of 2021, as I was writing down my pillars for the year, I have pillars. I have goals, and then I have pillars. Those are like my areas of focus. God literally spoke to me and said, start a scholarship fund. And I'm like, how? How do I do that? I don't know nobody doing that. And I called Felicia because when I met her, she introduced herself to me as a philanthropist. I didn't even know what that meant. So I had to go, you know, when I left our engagement, I had to go Google it. I'm like, what is that? So she had an existing scholarship fund where she gave away a $1,000 book award for current college students. And I knew that.
Nice.
So I called her and I said, hey, God just told me to start a scholarship fund. What do you think about merging? Like, let's merge. Like, I bring a $1,000 to the table. You already have your existing $1,000. We have a $2,000 scholarship. She said, that sounds great, but let's go for $20,000. Let's raise $20,000 and give it away. I'm like, whoa, I didn't call you for that, girl,
Right.
because I don't have the time to do that.
Right.
She was like, no, we're not going to do it. God's going to do it. And so that was last year. So it was our first year. While we didn't meet the $20K goal, we raised $10,000, but we did give away 5 $2,000 scholarships. So that was the inspiration behind it. It was definitely an assignment, a burdensome one, if I could just be quite honest. And it was hard.
Yeah.
It was very hard. Your second question was, how do students benefit?
Yeah.
Felicia and I both said, because we could have easily labeled the scholarship after ourselves. We could have said it's the Fortin Hostin Scholarship, and it crossed our mind. But we said it was bigger than us. We wanted to rally the community to do social good, and we wanted to like lead that effort. And we also wanted to do and add like a personal mentorship component. So every student that we award, we give the invitation. Now, all of them, like, you know, reach back. But we say, hey, we'd love to mentor you for your duration of college. So we give them our personal phone numbers. We check in on them. We're looking to send care packages this year. So it's not just a scholarship. You know, it's actually a relationship that we're extending to them. But we, like, garner the community's money to support them in that way, too.
No, I think that's awesome. I have since learned, now doing this show, wherever you are in life, as far as where you're trying to get to, you have to have people in your life who are already there. I'm finding that is critical, because your faith needs to move you. It needs to stretch you. But if you're only around people based on where you are, you're not going to be as inclined to move. And that's
true.
what I'm hearing when I hear you talk.
Yes.
So 5 youth have already benefited, receiving $2,000 from the scholarship fund. And you've talked about connecting with them and staying in touch with them.
Yeah.
I really would love to hear your thoughts as you have people in the audience who are feeling compelled to step out on faith, or they're at the point where they're willing to be stretched, but they haven't taken that step yet. What would you say to someone who is looking at you, hearing you? What would you say to them to get them to move?
Yeah, I tell them this story. When we sat down with the recipients and we asked them, could you tell us a little bit about how the $2,000 was useful for you? And one of the students said, it was like literally the yay or nay for me going to better my family.
Wow.
So I needed this last bit to get me like to live on campus. So it was literally my blessing. And Felicia and I both were heartwarmed because it was not an easy task. And in fact, her and I, we were bumping heads because we're both very strong Black women. We're both type A. We both like, what you doing? What are you doing?
Right.
And so we had to check ourselves and our spirits and remember our why. But we all said at the end, like, wow, it was very obvious that it was greater than us giving money. It was literally God's assignment to just use us. We're just the vessel.
Yeah.
And so I would say to the person who was watching, you know, it's your job to answer God's call so that you can meet the needs of his people. Essentially, that's what we did.
No, I love that. That's pretty much why this show exists, because I'm inspired by Focus on the Family Life Today. And I really believe we can do that too. We should have the same types of resources and outlets for our communities. And that's what you're doing. Talk about how this stretches you, because you've done things, you travel nationally, you speak, so you're doing things that other people would look at and admire. So how is this different from things you've already done?
Oh, this is very different because it is out of all of my wheelhouse. I don't like to ask. I have learned to ask, and I've learned to accept help as a result of this scholarship fund. In fact, my first email, the subject line was, "I'm putting my pride aside."
Right.
Because that's literally what I was doing and asking for money. And I had to reframe my mind. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for people to be a part of social good. I'm asking for them to change the trajectory of a person's life. I just happen to be like the person like asking.
Yeah.
But I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for you to help change someone's life. And so I have definitely, because it's not in my comfort zone, fundraising, all of this is just strange.
Yeah.
And I've grown in a way in which I've had to rely on God. Even so now, like, it's so funny. The scholarship brings on way too many visions, because now I have to like rely on God to speak to me. And he told me, like, in a dream, like, do a gospel concert. I don't know no musicians. Where am I do that at? So I'm like, you playing, Lord, this is too much. It's
Right.
becoming like Amazonian in my
Right.
mind, because I, on my own, cannot fathom doing that. But we're working on the plan to get it done. So I think when you ask me how have you changed, I think it's just learning to rely on God and realizing that there's no self-sufficiency in doing his work.
No, I love that, because previously at the end of January, I did a show, Crutches of Inadequacy, and focused on Gideon and how he said he was the least in his family and his family was the least in the tribe. But one thing God said to me recently concerning that is how grateful we should be that God doesn't wait until we're qualified or wait until we have all the dots and T's crossed.
Yeah.
Because it's not us, it's him doing the work, but we have to be willing to be the conduit, right? We have to be willing to put ourselves in a position where we can let God use us. I said today that faith will get us to the point where we're willing to be uncomfortable, willing to be in an unsettling situation, because we know it's working for God's glory
Yeah.
and the good of others.
Yeah.
So what's one final thing you would want anyone who's watching you, hearing you, as it relates to the scholarship fund, as it relates to Walking by Faith, on the subject of believe, what comes to your mind and what would you want someone to know?
Yeah, I think as a result of operating in God's power, like doing what he asks you to do, your faith increases. And it allows you to show up and have faith for others. So now when I hear people saying things like that could never happen, or I almost have like my own little personal experience where I could interject and be their faith and say, actually, it can. If you just, like, it's real now. It's not just a few words that you raffle off to make a person feel good. It's personal. So, yeah, that's probably my biggest takeaway for sure.
Because what comes to my mind in listening to you, the principle of ask, seek, knock, like we understand it's written, but like you said, that's something you're not comfortable with. It's something definitely I'm not comfortable with. But then you start seeing people doing things like the very person who owns this broadcast, and it just pushes you, right?
Yes, it does.
We have people who have that greater faith, and we just come under their umbrella until God like helps increase ours, and then someone comes under our umbrella.
Yep.
And I definitely feel inspired when I watch you, when I look at what you do and how you're living your life and walking by faith. I think this is just more evidence of what faith really means. Because we all have been at that point, right, where we're looking for God to do something for us, to bless us, to give us something. But when you live long enough, as you're talking about, and you start experiencing faith on a different level, then it becomes more about, okay, well, what can I do to help my community? Like, what gives us the thought that when you think about how big a community is, and we're thinking about what we can do to bless it and help it. And I think as you're walking by faith, that's what begins to happen. And so I'm just amazed still. You know, for those that don't know, Lanita is one of my former students. And so it's been about 20-some years now.
Yeah.
We've had the privilege of remaining in collaboration with each other. But what would you say to young people, young adults who are in college, high school students? What's one last thing you would say to them on the subject of faith and making progress in life?
And, you know, people always say God shows himself through like signs and wonders and opportunities. And I feel like a person's journey, if you take a look at all the things that you've encountered, people, organizations, places that you've worked, you are slowly being like the small pieces of your puzzle are starting to be collected. And if you see a similarity or pattern or similar interests or intersections, follow that. Like those are your clues. And so I'd say just keep your eyes open to the patterns that you're encountering in life, the good ones, the good patterns.
Keep your eyes open, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you on the other side of this break. Thank you, Lanita.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, my name is Tania McQueen. I'm the Residential Services Manager for Prestige Community Resources. What our new facilities are respite centers. We're opening 2 in the city right now. Hopefully we'll expand to more. But respite centers are a place where people can come and get a little additional support with their mental health. Our one on Eastern Avenue is for men, and our one on Minnesota Avenue is for women. Our facilities are for all DC residents, especially focusing in on those in Ward 7 and 8. So they're really nice, and I'm excited for consumers to actually see them. What are the services that we're going to provide? Therapy, case management, medication management, all provided by professional staff, a licensed nurse practitioner, psychiatrists, sociologists, social workers, and then our paraprofessionals, our case managers. It's just a place where you can come and get the supports that you need to work on your personal goals, as well as to get your mental health straight. Simple, single adult, 18 years of age or older, a DC resident. You need to have insurance, but if you don't have it, it's okay. Still come, we'll work on getting you insurance. Have to have a negative COVID test, a negative TB test, and be willing to work on your mental health. For more information about respite services, you can contact us at 202-796-5000 or hit us up on our website at www.prestigecommunityresources.org.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And we want to thank Lanita again for joining us here on Believe, where we look to inspire, influence, and impact those who join us live and those who check out our playback. I just want to let everybody know one of my goals is to support not only the scholarship fund, but what Lanita is doing with the pursuit of Black excellence for teens. We're trying to get 100 copies of that book in the hands of youth, and we want to invite you to join us as well. But as I said at the top of my show, today's theme is phenomenal women, and I have also with me today another phenomenal woman who's getting into some good trouble, Miss LaJean Pratt. Welcome, LaJean, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, we're excited to have you. And for those that don't know, LaJean is a client of mine, and she's been doing some great work moving forward, making momentum happen in her life. But we want to learn a little bit more about you. We want to learn about what you're doing. Yeah. And so at this time, LaJean, if you could tell us who you are and tell us what you do.
I will. So my name is LaJean Pratt, and I am a parent educator by day. I am a holistic wellness advocate overall, but I focus on the mind, body, and spirit of God's people. That is what I do. I have a holistic wellness business where we are able to tap more into mind, body, and soul through aromatherapy and through self-love and self-care and just those good things.
Awesome. And I know specifically I want to be able to have you to be able to talk today, to share a word with our audience. But from when I met you to where you are today, on the subject of believe, before we get into the topic you want to talk about today, what comes to your mind when you hear the word believe?
What comes to my mind is just the ability to be where God wants you to be. So when I first met you, Mr. Jones, I was in a very different state than now. So when you bring that up, that is what I think about. Is having those people around you that can see farther than you can. When I first met you, I was in a very down state, and you have been the encourager and the empowerer that has helped to uplift me through God. So yes, when I think of belief, that's what I think of.
No, I love that, and I appreciate you sharing that, because at some point we all get in that place. I think one thing that God has helped me to see, that even Jesus needed help carrying his cross. At the time he was being persecuted and he was definitely heading towards the crucifixion, someone had to help him carry his cross. So just because we're Christians doesn't mean, or just because we're followers of God doesn't mean we're not going to have these points where we need to be supported or encouraged. So I appreciate you sharing that. But I know you have a specific message that you would like to share today. So what specifically would you like for our listening audience and viewing audience to know?
So I'm going to be sharing about healing. When you invited me to do the show, Mr. Jones, I asked God, what is it that you want me to share? Because I'm a true believer that we should always be having conversations with him about what he wants us to do. That's his will for our life. And so I said, God, what is it that you want me to share? And he said, I want you to share about Jeremiah 29. And I said, okay, God. And I go to Jeremiah 29:11 because that's where we focus in at. And God's like, no, I need you to go back a little further than that. And he takes me to Jeremiah 29:5. And I said, okay, well, since you have me here, I'm going to stay here. And in Jeremiah 29:5, God tells his people to plant gardens and dwell there. He says to plant gardens and eat the fruit, build houses and dwell there. And I sat there for a minute because I said, okay, God, how does this pertain to what you need me to share? And his instruction was, you live in a world where people are losing hope. And I need you to help them to see me. And the only way to do that is to share my love and share my healing and share my grace. And so that's what I'm going to be sharing.
No, I love that. And I'm familiar with that passage. And one thing that comes to me at the top of my head when I think about it is enjoy your life. Because at the time that message came, they were still in captivity. So things weren't going well necessarily for God's people. Yes. And the first thing I take away from listening to that is you still need to enjoy your life. Even though we're in this context of captivity, life can still be enjoyed. Yes. So when you think about this message that you're sharing, what are some takeaways that you want the audience to receive from your message?
Definitely to enjoy your life, but then to know that you're not alone. Like there's clear instruction in that passage. Like God tells you, if you just listen to what I'm telling you, what I'm instructing you to do, you may be in a hard place, but if you just dwell there and make it home, because when God lives in us, so we should always have peace, even though there may not be peace around us. And so that is what comes up, just dwelling, abiding in his love and in his grace. So.
No, I love that too. When you think about your journey from where you've been, I think we met in October, yes, to where we are now, how do you see the value of abiding based on your own personal experience? Because my job as the coach really was to help promote and encourage the goals that you had. And I really felt like from what you were telling me that this was a season where you needed to be strengthened. So when you think of abiding, what comes to mind? What did you experience?
That's a great question, Mr. Jones. I would definitely say to surrender. Because that was something, and I feel like we don't want to do that. We don't want to surrender our strength. And what I found in that moment is that when we surrender our strength, that's when God is able to come in and even more and strengthen those weak places. So that was definitely where I was able to abide, to dwell right there under him, no matter how uncomfortable it was, because it was very uncomfortable. So, yeah.
What would you say would be one challenge or one reason that would make it difficult for people to practice abiding or surrendering? What would you say?
I would say lack of trust. Like, in order for you to abide or surrender, you have to be willing to trust. And so if we can't see it, sometimes it's hard to believe it. And people of faith, and I say that because people feel like Christians don't waver, and they do. And so I think that would be one, is lack of trust and uncertainty. So, yeah.
So help someone who's watching this show. They're hearing you, and they're getting to that point where they want to abide in Christ. You know, they want to abide in faith and learn to surrender. What's a practical thing they can do to begin to practice abiding and demonstrate surrender?
I would say obey, because the instruction is there, and that's the only thing I can say is to obey, because no matter how many times we read his word, it's like if you are not following what he's telling you to do, then you're always going to be you're going to be uncomfortable in abiding. But when you obey, then you're able to abide, because you clearly see that he's telling you to dwell here. And it's going to be good. Even if it doesn't feel good, it's going to be good. So, yeah.
So then speak to that person who they're still learning how to become comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. And now you're saying I'm supposed to dwell there in that uncomfortableness. Can you help them understand why that's important and a practical way to do that?
I would say to hold tight to your joy, because and that means hold tight to that family member who you're safe with. Hold tight to a place where you find safety in, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to be comfortable in the discomfort. It's like if you can find something that allows you to still feel God's presence, then that will allow you to still feel comfortable. Even if you can't listen or really dig into his word, finding something that still gives you that same presence.
What would you say to the person who they have this pattern that I've experienced in life as well, where you get motivated, you get serious, you get moving, momentum is building, and then trauma from the past interferes and you fall, stumble, lose motivation, and you never finish things you start? What would you say to that person?
I would say embrace those moments, because that is where God does his best work. That's the spaces or the spots where we're most strengthened, is when we fall, because we aren't able to do it in our own strength. So I would say abide when you do fall, and know that he has what you need to get up and go again.
Awesome. So we've had the privilege of being able to hear from you as a holistic wellness advocate,
Yes.
but you're also a mom.
Yes.
What do you want to say in the remaining time that we have to that single parent mom, to that young female they feel like they're struggling? What do you want to say to them to make them feel like you might be struggling now, but what do you want to say to them?
I would tell them that there's no book to parenting. Like, there's no perfect way to do it, but as long as you have the belief that God's will for your life is to parent, you're going to be able to operate at your best, no matter what it looks like. That is what I would say.
Awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've had the privilege of having some phenomenal women on our show in celebration of Black History Month. This is also the celebration of the launch of my show, Believe. And I want to thank again LaJean for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to thank Lanita as well. And in the remaining time that we have, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to encourage you to keep walking by faith, keep trusting God, keep abiding, keep practicing the things that's going to help you move. It's good to have goals. I definitely believe in goals in life, but we also have to learn how to facilitate movement and momentum. Without that, we're not able to reach those goals that we have. So learn how to pray, learn how to stay in faith, learn how to be encouraged, and don't let nothing get in the way of where you're trying to go. Move around it if you have to. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Believe, where we look to inspire, influence, and impact. I'm Cortland Jones.